Oh, hello, everybody. This is Susie Walker from the Heart Leap Club, and I am so delighted to be talking to Caroline Ferguson today, who is the founder of Substack, Born for Something More.
Yay! Brand new.
Yeah, brand
Brand
new.
new.
I can't wait to do that. But today, Caroline, who is part of our Heart Leap Club, will be talking to us about getting out of our own way. Especially, I mean, we have a lot of writers in the Heart Leap Club, so it's especially when we're learning how to write, be it a new novel, be it a non-fiction book, even whether it's just putting your Substack together. So Caroline is a psychotherapy trained mindset coach, and she has been such a huge influence in our Heart Leap community. I love your wisdom. I mean, I really look forward to it. So at Heart Leap, we have two writing sessions every week on a Tuesday and Thursday morning at 9 a.m. And Caroline always sprinkles her wisdom into our session. So thank you so much for that.
It's a pleasure. They're wonderful.
So Caroline, tell us what you're going to be talking about today and start us off.
So this session really came out of a conversation that we had in one of your writing sessions where a lot of absolutely wonderful people and brilliant writers were admitting to feeling inadequate, I suppose, not good enough at times, and who's going to want to read my stuff, and who do I think I am to be putting myself out there, and and I was hearing all of that, and I felt all of that. So I thought, well, why don't we have a session on how it is that we get in our own way, where those silly stories of ours are coming from, those voices, and give us also some guidance on how we can set up a deliberate habit of writing, of creating, of doing whatever it is that we feel compelled to put out into the world, because so many of us self-sabotage by procrastination and by all these feelings of not good enough. And we all have these great intentions to get a book into the world, or stories or screenplays or whatever it is, and very few of us actually make it. I was reading some stats the other day on New Year's resolutions, and only 9% of people get to the end of the year having stuck to their resolution, and nearly 40% give up by the end of January. So it's a very common human trait. So I thought, once we've talked about how we get in our way, then we can talk about, right, how do we instill, given we've got all these old habits, how do we instill really helpful new ones? So I'm going to talk a bit about that. And then I'm going to finish off with 3 tools that I use with my mindset clients, and I use myself, to really help us to change state in the moment where we're putting something off, or procrastinating, or feeling rubbish about ourselves. So hopefully they will be something that practical that you can take away. Then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A, and then we'll move on to a 15-minute hypnosis session, which is just where you can all sit back and relax and close your eyes, and we'll talk about creativity and about accessing your own inner genius and your inspiration. So that's what we're going to be doing.
I love the sound of inner genius. So if everyone can put themselves on mute, and we're going to listen to Caroline now. And if you can keep questions to the end, after about 35 minutes. We can just put it in. If you can just write any questions that you've got in the chat, or speak up, but we'll let you know when. So brilliant. Caroline, off you go.
Okay, let me share my screen. Here we go, and I'll just put it onto slideshow. Right, can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the title is How to Get Out of Your Own Way, Break Through Your Inner Resistance, and Feel More Focused and Confident, because that really comes along with it. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about how we self-sabotage, and it's all about that inner resistance, and what one of my clients calls the sticky brake on her bicycle. It's try to ride uphill on your bicycle with your brakes still on, and those feelings of being not good enough. Then we're going to talk about that sustainable, productive habits, the enjoyable habits that we're able to command, that we're not at the mercy of our procrastination, our old habits. Then those mindset tools that I mentioned, which are going to help you to instantly change state and refocus. And that's not just with writing or creating, that's in any part of your life. And this is something that's fantastic for you to teach your kids, teach your partner, teach your friends, and use every day. I certainly do. We'll have a little bit of Q&A and then the hypnosis. So first of all, on to that self-sabotage. Oops. So how do we do it? Where does it come from? Where do those voices come from? If they're not helpful to us, why do we do it at all? Well, I've identified 5 main ways in which we get in our own way. And the therapists will tell you that there are 3 ways, but I just couldn't, I couldn't force humans into 3 little buckets. So I created a couple of new ones. Now, we all do all of these at times, but we tend to have our favorites. I certainly do all of them. And what I'd really like is if, while I'm going through these quickly, the anagram is PACE, is the acronym. While I'm going through them, just take note of the ones that sort of bite you, the ones that you think, oops, yeah, that's me, I'm there. Because it's really helpful in terms of our self-awareness to understand where our triggers lie. And we think we might know all of them, but there's always a couple that sneak in there and take us by surprise. So PACE's acronym, the first P stands for perfectionism. And perfectionism is about both really wanting to do it brilliantly, wanting to do it perfectly, but it's also about fear of failure. The next one is about approval addiction. And approval, that need has 2 faces as well. So the first face is, we all know people who are desperate for attention, who desperately need external validation. They need us to prove that they're worthwhile people and they're clamoring for our attention. They want us to like them. They want us to like their work and their stuff. But the other side of that, and this is the one that gets me, is the people pleasing. So we want to put other people's needs first. We prioritize them. We don't want to let them down. And I think that's an aspect that women in particular, especially women with families, are really familiar with. We put everybody's needs above our own. So the C in PACES, this is one I've added, is about need for certainty. And during the last few years, when things were tricky and we had to stay at home, there was a real problem around the country with people developing severe anxiety because there was no certainty. We didn't know when we were getting out. We didn't know if we'd survive. We didn't know, how ill people were going to be, or if we were going to lose our loved ones or lose our businesses. It was very difficult. So that one is still lingering, and I know it's one that in the past has got me quite badly. The fourth of the PACEs, the E, stands for ease, and that is about wanting life to be secure, wanting to feel safe, wanting to live within our comfort zones. Not particularly one of mine, because I happen to be a high sensation seeker who needs excitement and new experiences and varied experiences. But I know a lot of people around me do feel that stretching their comfort zone is difficult for them. And then the final one, which is also the one I've added, it's my second one I've put in there, is I call it self-rule. And self-rule is all about control. It's all about our need to control what's happening within our lives, around us, and in terms of other people's behavior towards us. So I hope that you've managed to recognize, 1 or 2 there. It used to be for me, approval and certainty were the 2 big ones, but it's really interesting. And now that I've found my born for something more, which is what my Substack is all about, now I found that thing that I think I was born to do. It's actually perfectionism and self-rule that are my biggest triggers. I want to do it well and I want to do it my way. So it really helps us to, to understand where we're being triggered. And how we get triggered is by the stories that we tell ourselves about what's going on there. Now, with each of these, there's either ego or safety is the theme. And as I go through some of these stories, it will become clear, which those are. So perfectionism, that one is all about ego. That's all about our need to stand up and be counted and be noticed. And the typical stories might be, I have to do it well. I need to do it really well. I mustn't fail at this. I mustn't get it wrong. I mustn't do it badly. I have to be original or different is another one. And that's something that really got me, because when I first started segueing out of therapy and into more of the coaching world, I didn't want to call myself a coach because everyone was doing coaching and I felt that I was different. So I really wanted a different way to describe myself. And I called myself a mindset trainer because I train people in a process. But, that was definitely me. I wanted to be different. And then also imposter syndrome, they mustn't find out that I don't know what I'm doing. And I really think the majority of humans suffer from imposter syndrome at some stage or other. And if they say they don't, then I don't believe them, frankly. So that's part of perfectionism. Now let's have a look at need for approval. And that one is all about the ego. It's please like me, or I must get my validation by showing how much I care about you. And the typical stories here are, for those who have the first type, I need people to notice me. I need you to like what I do. I need you to validate me. I need others to prove that I'm talented. They've got to let me know. Then there's the type that I have, which is I have to put other people's needs first. I need to prioritize you, and I mustn't let anyone down. So typical stories that we have, and all of these stories, I should say, are mostly unconscious. We're mostly not aware that it's like a drumbeat that's going on in the background for us, and these themes that recur over and over again in our lives. Then typical stories around certainty, well, these ones are pretty easy. This is safety behaviors. So I have to know what's happening, where it's happening, when it's happening, why it's happening, and who it's happening to and with, and how. And I need to know that I've got all the gear if I'm going to be taking up something new. I need to know if I've got a business that I know all the steps in all the right order and I haven't left anything out. I have to know there's going to be a good ending. I have to know how to do it. I have to know how you feel. So it's this need to know is certainty, and that is definitely all about safety. And it shows up, the emotional way it shows up is through anxiety. And then finally, the fourth one is about ease. And that one really is all about the comfort zone. It mustn't feel too hard. It mustn't feel boring. It mustn't feel scary. And often, teenagers are very good at expressing how they don't want to feel bored, or it can be unbearable for them to feel bored. I have to know I can cope is another one. It's about our resilience. And the thing about resilience is that we're all incredibly resilient. Whether you feel it or not, because you've survived every single thing that's ever happened to you. So you are resilient, all of us are, but we have to know we can cope. And also I mustn't feel overwhelmed. And in addition to being a high sensation seeker, I'm also a highly sensitive person and an HSP. So, it struggles with the overwhelm of wanting those new experiences, but actually getting a little bit bogged down in them sometimes and feeling overwhelmed. So that's around ease, and that there again, it's a safety behavior. And the final one, self-rule, is back to ego. This is kind of my favorite one in some ways. So this is about, I'll do it when I feel like it. Don't push me. I'll do it in my own time. And it's about don't tell me what to do, which I really have. It kind of amuses me that I used to get really annoyed when I was driving. And then I realized that there was someone in the car that was telling me what to do all the time. And it was my sat nav. So it just kind of made me laugh at that point. And I learned something about myself that day, as well as laughing. Other people's rules, I play by my rules. I shouldn't have to play by other people's rules. And also this hilarious one, which so many of us have, who suffer from procrastination, which I do. I have to have a deadline. I can only do the work if I'm right up against it at the last minute, and it gives me the energy and I do my best work. And actually, no, you don't. All of the studies say that if you've got time to plan and prepare, you're going to do a much better job. But that's the story we tell ourselves. So that one's all about ego. So those are the 5 ways in which we wind ourselves up the most. They are responsible for most of our being triggered and our bad habits and behaviors and our uncomfortable emotions. And the thing about these sabotaging stories is what they all have in common is they tend to be musts. They tend to be imperatives. So must, should, ought to, got to, have to, need to, or the negative versions of those: mustn't, shouldn't, can't, needn't, all of that sort of thing. Because the problem is that where we have a must, we have an or else. Or else it's awful. Or else I can't cope. I can't bear it. Or else I'm not good enough. That's the big one. So for us humans, low self-worth tends to start in childhood with the messages that we receive from outside of us in childhood, often from the people who are supposed to keep us safe. But as adults, we perpetuate it by attaching our value to what we think has to happen or not happen, what we think we have to have or not have. So, for example, perfectionism, I must do really well or else I'm not good enough. And remember, this is subliminal. This is unconscious. We don't even know we're doing it to ourselves. And it's these or else's that really kick us. So I must put your needs first or else I'm a bad person. You know, I must know what's going to happen or else the world is a dangerous place and or else I'm inadequate. Because it's not just ourselves we judge. It's other people in the world around us as well. And it's all unspoken, but it's like dominoes going down. As soon as we have a must, we have an or else. So that's something to think about next time you feel emotionally out of kilter or disturbed and there's something going on, whether it's anxiety or guilt or shame or hurt, any of those difficult emotions. You know, it's just finding out which of my pace's hotspots have been triggered here, and what's the must, you know, what's the imperative I'm giving myself. So our self-worth, we tie it to what we think has to happen or not. And demands are so unhelpful because they're irrational. You know, just because we think it has to happen doesn't mean it's going to. We're not going to get our own way. You know, the world lets us down often enough that we should know that by now. It's also unrealistic and illogical because there's absolutely no reason for the world to deliver to us what we think has to happen. And it's also unhelpful because when we're holding on to what we think has to happen or not happen, we have to do it brilliantly. We mustn't fail. We mustn't let people down. You know, we have to know what's happening. When we're holding on to that stuff, and then we are disappointed because it doesn't come to pass, we get disturbed. You know, we get massively disappointed. We get massively afraid. We feel terrible about ourselves. We feel terrible about the world. And so it's just really unhelpful. We become very judgmental of ourselves and others in the world. So that's how we get in our own way. And obviously, we don't have time in this session for me to be able to help you to rebuild those stories so that they're not getting in the way. But just recognizing them is the first step. When we can hear them, we can do something about it. So let's move on to the second bit, which is about the habits. So I talked about, you know, if, for example, there's a lot of writers in the group, or, you know, musicians and artists, coaches, teachers, whatever it is that is your passion that you want to put out into the world. You know, how do we build sustainable products, productive, enjoyable habits? Well, first, a little word about habits themselves. So just in terms of very simple neuroscience, the brain is the most energy hungry part of our bodies at rest. So a brain at rest uses 20% of the energy in your body. That's an enormous amount. And the reason we form habits is because they're energy efficient. Because when you repeat something and you do it repeatedly, it starts to create almost like a superhighway in your brain, in that the neurons, which are the nerves in the brain, start to join together on that pathway that you use frequently. And they start to almost become cemented together so that thing can happen faster without conscious thought, automatically, easily, and saving energy. So that's why habits exist. And the problem is that once they are formed, that they're called neural pathways. Once a neural pathway is formed, it's always there. So people who say to you that they can eradicate habits and let them go for good, they're actually not telling the truth, because from a neurological point of view, once a pathway is there, it's always there. And that's the bad news. But the good news is that actually we can build new pathways. And if we can build a compelling new pathway that is much more rewarding to us, much more advantageous to us, advantageous than the one that, you know, the bad old habit that we've been doing, the one about feeling bad, the one about procrastinating, the one about reaching for a biscuit when we're stressed, those old habits. If we can create a compelling new pathway and really work at following it, then our body will stop using the old one and default to the new one. Although at times of extreme stress, we still tend to divert back to the old one. At least we can be aware of the fact that we do that, and we can preempt it and help ourselves to follow new ones. So that's a little reason for habits existing. So how do we build new ones? Well, I came up with a formula for building what I call a deliberate habit, not an accidental one. And that is repetition plus commitment plus emotional energy builds you good, strong, deep habits. So repetition, doing it often, as with any habit. Commitment is the difference between a passive habit that develops almost automatically and a deliberate habit that we want to set. And emotional energy. Now, emotional energy is part of all habits. So, for example, the biscuit habit, or sweets, or whatever your poison is, in particular, crisps it might be, or a drink, or whatever, that habit formed, and the emotional energy, the reward you got the first time or the second time or the third time you had a biscuit or a drink or whatever in a stressful situation, and you got a little dopamine hit or a serotonin hit, that was your reward. That created an emotional response, which told your brain, oh, that's a good thing, let's do more of that. So we know that we need to include this emotional energy when we're building a new habit. And these actions also help us to build confidence too, because this session is as much about confidence as it is about our triggers. So that's the formula, and we'll remember that while we're doing this. So in order to form a new habit, we have to prepare for it. We have to understand what it is that we want to achieve. And the juicier we can get that, the more mouth-watering we can make that, the better. It's about, are you a carrot motivated person or a stick motivated person? Are you motivated to move away from difficulty, which is the stick, away from pain? Or are you motivated to move towards the juicy carrot, towards the pleasure, which is, the carrot side? And I'm a stick. I'm an away from pain, but I've learned how to be a carrot because it's much more sustainable in the long term in terms of your goals and habits if you've got something to look forward to rather than you're just moving away from pain. So have this clear idea and make it as juicy and as mouthwatering and as vivid as you can. Really imagine it in details. And then you also need to understand what action you need to take, what effort you need to put in, how often, and how long it's going to take you, and just to be realistic about that. So you prepare the ground and you give your mind the information that it needs to start that habit. Really important here, give yourself full permission. So to go back to writing again, one of the conversations we had around this was that people don't feel that they're allowed to be writers. No one said to them, it's okay. It's okay for you to be a writer. So we have to give ourselves that permission, and it has to be unconditional, fully unfettered permission. So that is something that we need to reflect on and do deliberately. Then this is a little technique, and I'm a great believer in talking to yourself. I think the mirror is probably one of the best coaches that we have. So stand in front of the mirror, and 3 times a day, when you go to the loo, when you brush your teeth, whatever, so just immediately start with breathing, because that activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which governs relaxation and also focus. So take 3 slow, deep breaths and remind yourself what you want to do. Slow, deep breaths, and I'm a writer. I want to write regularly. I want to create a book. I want to publish that book. And then go back to the first point there. I want to publish that book by the end of next year, for example. So just remind yourself 3 times a day. And when you do this, you develop a habit of talking to yourself out loud, coaching yourself, treating yourself as if you're a sensitive, intelligent child that you're trying to nurture. Do that 3 times a day, make a habit of it, and it keeps it front of mind, what you want to achieve and the habit that you want to build. Then we need a plan. We need to break it down into achievable little, what my friend Elaine calls munchable chunks. So make those chunks munchable, and make sure that they've got a beginning and an end, and that you reward yourself when you get to a significant milestone. And let go of the need to be perfect. Be conscious of your perfectionism, be conscious of your fear of failure, and just keep reminding yourself, remember that sensitive child that you want to nurture. Remind yourself that it's okay to just be okay and to get it out there. Getting it out there done is much better than not done. And then hold yourself accountable. Now, you can do that with yourself, but I personally find with my approval addiction that it really helps if I have someone else to be accountable to as well. So, we can use our vulnerabilities, if you like, as strengths in a way, because I know that I don't want to let somebody down. So I've got a fantastic business buddy who I'm slightly scared of, it has to say. I'm scared of letting her down. So I use that fact to spur me on and to give me motivation to get things done. Then after you've prepared to actually develop your action habit, and remember, I've got this little formula on the side here. Each week, make sure you allocate time that you're going to take action, that you're going to build this habit, that you're going to get the repetition in that you need to create the habit. And depending on, they say it takes 6 weeks to build a habit. Well, yeah, that's if you want to drink more water. But if you want to get a book out there and really develop the deep habit of writing regularly and being a writer, then it is going to take a bit longer. So you need to consciously do these actions for longer. But I promise you, it gets easier. And I promise you that once the neural pathway is formed, it starts to take over, but you still need to keep on top of it. So set aside the time for the repetition. And then every night, this is another technique I use regularly, and I also advise my mindset clients, get a stack of index cards. They've got these fantastic little cards in supermarkets now, which are held together with a little chain. Very cheap. I think they're about £2.50 for about 60 or something like that. Anyway, every night, write down while you're in bed, just scribble down what it is you're going to do tomorrow, and do it as if it's now. So it needs to be first person, I. It needs to be present tense, I am doing it, not I will be doing it. And it needs to be an active voice, so that it's not something that's being done to you, it's something that you're doing. So the example I've given here is I'm writing 1,000 words in 2 hours and feeling great about my progress. And you have to mean it, because if we look back at the formula here, that commitment and that emotional energy comes from meaning it. If we don't care about this, it's not going to work. We have to care about it. So you write that down at night, you're all fired up. First thing you do in the morning, before you get out of bed, is you read it out loud to yourself. Now, whoever else is in bed with you, too bad. Read it out loud to yourself with conviction. Remember that commitment and that emotional energy. And if you're not actually feeling it, then act as if. So, there's that phrase, fake it to make it, which I absolutely hate. And I'll tell you why later, but I absolutely hate it. So, but there's no doubt from a neurological point of view, if we pretend, if we act as if we are something often enough and strongly enough, it starts to happen. My version is make believe, because you're literally making a new belief. So the conviction's important. And then have a ritual. So for me, it's about making a cup of tea, clearing my desk. I like to have scribble notes with a pencil, even if I'm working on a laptop, or I have a remarkable tablet that I scribble on. So I make sure that's by me. I've got a tissue. I've got my cup of tea. And you can set a Pomodoro timer. If you don't know what that is, look online for tomato timer, Pomodoro timer. You'll find lots of them. It's just a little stopwatch that's on the screen, and you click it. And I think 25 minutes is the time they suggest, but I rarely, I usually go for an hour. But anyway, get yourself straight and have that as a ritual. Perhaps there's something you say to yourself before you start, before whatever it is, whether it's writing or creating something else. But have a ritual. And then as you get into the habit, that ritual starts to immediately trigger your head to start being creative, to start planning, to start accessing your ideas. So actions are really important, as well as just the planning side of things. And then when you get distracted, please keep your phone way away from you so that social media doesn't doesn't intrude. If you can, turn it off for the time that you're working. But when you get distracted, which we all do, just ask yourself, how does giving in to this in this moment, how does that serve my goal? How does that serve this book I'm writing? How does this serve the people I'm developing this thing for? Just how does it serve? You know, because we talk about getting complicated into writing, and it's how does it serve the story? So always think about the end result and what you're doing right now and how it serves that end result. Now, the mindset tools, let me just check the time. The mindset tools that I promised you, the first one, and it's part of that the equation, the formula for forming habits, is really about commitment. And you need to know where you are with commitment, and you need to be able to ramp it up. So there we go. It's there in that formula. Now, this diagram, that green arrow there is about the degree of commitment, the degree of conviction you hold. And the orange one is about your likelihood of achieving what you've set out to do. And we're all familiar with being down here in the doldrums of I really ought to do something, you know, where there's guilt attached to it. That's not, when you're in that space, you're really not in a position to be able to get anything done at all or to form a good habit. So if that's where you are with a project, I would suggest you find another project, because, you know, or a job or whatever it is, because you're not convinced, you're not enthusiastic, you're not in love with this. I want to, that's getting better. I intend to, better still, but you're still not necessarily going to achieve it. I think you've only got something like a 24% chance if you're thinking, okay, I've got an intention here. I'm determined to is stronger, but it's really when you get to this point of commitment, full on commitment. I commit to achieving this thing that I can tell you all about, and these are the ways it's going to take me. This is the actions that I need to. So you know exactly what your goal is. You're enthusiastic about it. You're wholeheartedly committed to it. And if you find yourself somewhere around I intend to or I'm determined to, you know, that's when you can do the make-believe. You need to feel it more. So that's when you can say to yourself, okay, I need to ramp up my commitment. And so just visualize that end goal, make it incredibly juicy, and ask yourself, how would somebody who was completely in love with this, somebody who was completely committed and was really ready and able to take action, how would they think? How would they behave? And then model that. You know, that version of yourself that is wholeheartedly committed, be that version. Act as if you are that version. And it's amazing how quickly your mind can grab hold of that and make that a reality. Mindset tool number 2. Now this, to be honest, is worth the price of admission, frankly, because this is my whole mindset training in a nutshell. People come to me for 10 sessions to learn these 3 tiny questions. Obviously, it gets more complex than that, but not much. So 3 empowering questions, and these will help you to change state in a second. And this is really what I think you should be teaching other people as well. When you're stuck, when you're overwhelmed, when you're putting things off, when you're just not getting to it. So 3 questions. The first one, which is I call the world's most important question. I use it all the time. What's the story I'm telling myself about the situation that's leading me to feel like this? Now, it sounds like a simple question, but there's a lot going on here. So first of all, you're talking about a situation. What's the story I'm telling myself about the situation? So you're identifying what's going on. Secondly, you know, there's that story. And thirdly, the story is leading me to feel like this. The story is creating emotions. This isn't a new thought. Epictetus, Stoic philosopher, 2,000 years ago, he said, it's not the event that disturbs us so much as our view of the event. You know, it's not the thing itself. Yes, that has an impact, but that's not what really disturbs us. It's what we think about it. It's a story we tell ourselves about it. So that question, what's the story I'm telling myself about the situation that's leading me to feel like this, gets you to acknowledge the situation, to acknowledge you've got a story, and to acknowledge that that story is leading you to feel rubbish. So question number 1. And also, you know, you can, if you're finding it difficult to identify the story, go through your PACES hotspots. Is it because I want to do it really well and I don't think I can? Is it because this person isn't paying attention to me? Is it because someone is demanding that I follow their timetable or their rule or whatever it is? Ask yourself, take yourself through the paces. Question number 2 is, what would a better outcome look like? What would be better than this? And in any situation you find yourself in, you may not be able to influence the situation. You can try, but what you can influence is how you show up in it. So sometimes a better outcome is for you not to feel anxious. Sometimes a better outcome is for you not to procrastinate. It doesn't have to be this perfect long-term ideal solution. We don't want to fall into perfectionism here. So it's just, okay, that situation I described that I feel like that about, that I'm telling myself stories about, what would be a better outcome right now? And then the third question is, how do I make that happen? How do I make it more likely? What do I have to do differently? What do I have to think differently? What new story can I come up with that actually is going to lead me to feel less anxious, to feel less guilty, to feel less hurt, to feel less angry, to be able to take action? So those are the 3 questions. And how they work is that the first question, if we're in an unconscious emotional spiral, it interrupts, by punching that question in, what's the story I'm telling myself? We get out of autopilot and we summon our executive functioning, which is what I call our dragon mindset, our wise, creative, adult, solution-focused self, just by asking the question. Our minds have no choice but to try and answer it. So we interrupt that spiral and we move into consciousness, out of unconsciousness, out of that knee-jerk response. It helps us to start recognizing our stories and how they're affecting us and the themes behind our stories. And actually, there aren't that many of them. We all tend to have our favorite self-sabotage tricks. And it helps us to change state in that moment where previously we were running on the spot, we were feeling emotional, not in a good way, we were stuck, the situation felt overwhelming. We've now taken control of ourselves in that situation and we've changed our state. We're no longer helpless. We've now got the wheel between our hands and we can start steering us in a better direction. And it reminds us that I am in charge of me, you are in charge of you. It's not the world out there that is piling all this on me. It may be doing that, but I have some agency, I have sovereignty here, I have some authority over myself. So it puts us back in charge. So there you are, instant state change from perhaps helplessness to a point where actually we're back in charge of us. One of my favorite poems of all, Invictus, the final lines, I'm the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. That just rings for me in terms of self-leadership, which is what we're talking about here. And you can use them for all sorts of things, these questions, to refocus when we feel inadequate. It helps us to come around to understanding that it's our thoughts that are making us feel that way. It helps us to prioritize when we feel overwhelmed. And inspiration. So we feel stuck if we've got to a point in a book or whatever it is that we're thinking, I don't know how to get out of this, and I'm a bit bored of this, and I don't know what to do next, don't know where to take it. Just asking these 3 questions, what's the story I'm telling myself? What would better look like, and how do I make that happen? Immediately gives us something to do. And the important point there is that we have to take that action once we've decided, what it is that we need to do to make that better outcome happen. We need to start taking those actions, even if they're just baby steps. And they help us to generate new ideas when we're feeling a bit stuck. So quick recap of those questions. What's the story? What would a better outcome look like? And what can I do to make that happen? So write those down and put them somewhere where you can find them easily. Then mindset tool number 3, just check the time, is find your powerful mantra. Now, I know this is a bit Californian and a bit woo, but actually it's changed my life. My mantra has changed my life. Now, we can't just adopt somebody else's. We can't. We have to find the right statement or question for us. And because this mantra really is about who you are. It's about your purpose. It's your clarion declaration of who you are and how you go about, how you approach living. So it is about also adding emotion to your intention. And remember, to create habits, we have to have that emotional energy. So my suggestion of how you go about creating your mantra is, first of all, you really need to know what's important to you. And we all have good ideas about what's important, but unless you've really done the values exercise, you're probably carrying a lot of baggage from the way you were brought up, from the way you were educated, from the workplaces, etc. And some of those won't be yours. And some of the stuff that is yours, you won't have in your toolkit right now. So go and do the values exercise. This place is the Barrett Values Center. It used to be free. I think it's about $20 now, but they're still the best as far as I'm concerned. And half of that $20 goes to the charities, and they're good ones. So I'd spend the bucks and do that. GeniusU.com also has a passions test, but the user interface on that is pretty dire, but it's still quite useful. So get clear on your values, and then you need to work on finding a statement, explore those values, find a statement that speaks to a really significant value. Because I've got lots of values, but there's 5 that are really important to me. And then when you feel that you need that encouragement, when you're about to procrastinate, when you want to distract yourself, that's when you use it out. You wheel out this big gun and you fire it at yourself. Sorry, that's not a very peaceful metaphor, is it? But you know what I mean. It is life-changing when you find the right one. So just to talk you through mine. So mine, I wanted to create this habit of walking every day, and I wanted it to be non-negotiable, which was quite difficult when you're in Scotland in horizontal sleet. Just looking out the window, suddenly watching telly seemed like a good idea. So I wanted to create this non-negotiable habit, and it led, so finding my mantra led to 19 months of walking every day, regardless of the weather. And as a result, in those 19 months, I walked 2,000 miles, walked my way through 3 pairs of walking wellies. I lost 20 pounds, and it just changed my whole strength and fitness and my health and how I felt about life and how I felt about nature. I developed such a strong relationship with being outside that it's become absolutely essential to me now. And what was my mantra? Today is not the day I break my promise to myself. I get a bit tearful just thinking about it because it's such a strong value. And my top 5 values are love, dare, honor, connect, and transform. And this one absolutely encompasses honor. I'm quite moved by it. So you have to find the one that resonates for you. And if honor is a big one, and honor is all about respecting yourself and others, it's about truth, it's about authenticity, it's about integrity, it's about showing up in your, in all of your vulnerability, and most of all, it's about honesty and it's about respect. So for me, this is a huge one for me. And frankly, when I fire this one at myself, it gets me off the chair and out the door straight away, or it gets me with my pen in my hand and doing the work. Because if I've made that promise to myself, I don't want to break it. So that is the third one of the tools. So very quickly, what we've covered is we've looked at how we get in our own way, how we sabotage, how we create inner resistance. And that's through the paces: perfectionism, approval addiction, need for certainty, desire for ease, and need for self-rule, for that control. How to build sustainable, productive, enjoyable habits and make sure that you get that repetition in, that you get the commitment, and you really put that emotional energy in, and act as if, make believe if you need to, but be really clear, first of all, on what it is that you want to build the habit on and for what the outcome is going to be. And if you can attach that to your values, so much the better. And we've also looked at these mindset tools, which are ramping up your commitment, asking yourself those 3 powerful questions, and finding your mantra. Call it whatever you like. I don't really know what I call mine. I think I call mine my statement, really, my statement of intent. So that is, I'll just stop sharing now. That's a very quick gallop through the mindset training part of this. We've got about 15 minutes left. So I would say probably, Susie, only about 5 minutes for questions at this
Caroline,
point.
Thank you. That was absolutely great. I got emotional when you said today is not the day I break my promise to myself. I thought it would be bad. I'm on this 100-day meditation challenge and I've really struggled this week, but I kept doing it. But I just noticed how I kind of try and wriggle out of it. But I think that is such a powerful statement. I mean, I know that, honor isn't particularly one of, my values, but I think I'm going to adopt it. It's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic.
Feel free.
Yeah, really, really good. I got so much out of that, but I'm going to stop talking now and just hand it over to everybody. Either you can say your question or you can write it in the chat, which I put there. So has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask Caroline? Erin, hi.
Hi, Caroline. That was amazing.
Hi.
That was really amazing. Plus, you have such a lovely voice. It's very lilting, so it adds to it. But it's not a question, I guess. It kind of is a question. I was really struck by your statement, which was, today is the day I do not break my promise. Because I'm thinking the American cheerleader would say, today is the day I keep my promise.
Yeah.
And there was something about that was so much more powerful.
Yeah. Because actually, for me, breaking a promise is breaking my heart and breaking someone else's heart. So keeping the promise doesn't resonate for me in the same way as breaking a promise does. So that was
my question about, I mean, I know Americans are the ultimate cheerleaders anyway. We drive people crazy sometimes. But it just completely was a wake-up call.
Yeah. So finding the right words is so important. It's so important. And one of the things I want to do on my Substack actually is I'm going to run a session like this every month, and I want to help people to come up with their statements as well, because it's so personal, it's so individual, but it has to be in line with our values. It has to. We can't just go onto the internet and, chat GPT and say, give me a load of mantras and just pick one. Well, we can, but we have to do the work to make sure that it's going to vibe with us. We really have to. Thank you.
That was really powerful. Thank you so much.
To remind everybody, Born for Something More is Caroline Substack. So
thank you.
Join me after this call, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you.
And anybody else got any questions? I know we'll do. Oh, Maria.
Maria,
you need to come off mute, darling. Hang on. Let's come out off mute.
Okay. Caroline, thank you for a wonderful session. That was absolutely amazing. And just this very afternoon, when I was driving home, I had that epiphany. I cannot break a promise to myself again. And I knew that I had changed that very moment. So for you to mention the importance of that is absolutely fantastic. But what I'd like to ask you is something that you mentioned before, that you said, I'll speak about it later, and it's a favorite of mine. And I want to see what it is that I'm doing wrong with that, which is fake it until you make it. It's one of my mantras. Just fake it until you make it. And then eventually, within a few days, months, whatever, it seems to find its place. So what did you not like about that?
Because it's dishonorable. It's about fakery.
Got you.
It's the words, it's the language. Fake it till you make it. I can't possibly do that, but what I can do, because neurologically it works.
But it is sometimes I can make believe. It is a survival thing, just for a day when you're really at the bottom. You've got to fake it sometimes just to get yourself out of a hurdle. And
I will never fake it, Maria, but what I will do is make believe. I will imagine that I can do it.
Okay.
It's slightly different. I mean, neurologically, it's the same.
Okay.
But the language is such a turn off for me. The whole idea of fake is I recoil from it. But if I say to myself, I'm going to make believe that I can do this, I'm going to make a new belief that I can do this, and then I'm going to act in line with that new belief. Now that I can get fully on board with. Neurologically, it's the same. It is.
And it might dictionary, because although I feel, as you say, I will see myself already succeeding it.
Yes.
But when I say fake it is because I'm not feeling that at the moment.
Okay. So make believe and then act as if. And imagine the version of you that would be able to do that and then model her, act as if you are her.
Okay. Well,
thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. I'm going to have to cut you short now. Thank you, Maria. I'm going to put you on mute. And Caroline, do you want to take us? Thank you, everybody, for your
will do.
Do you want to take? I'm going to just stop this recording now. I think somehow. Pause record. Caroline, that was so great. Thank you so much for that incredible
pleasure.
Hypnosis. I feel a little bit emotional, actually.
So do I.
That was really, really powerful. Thank you so much. So I will be sending that recording out to everybody. And everyone will also be able to see the recording of this whole seminar masterclass on my Substack, the Heartleap Substack. But I would encourage everyone to, if we want more of Caroline, which I think we do, for something more is Caroline Substack, and I believe that she'll be doing lots of amazing sort of workshops like this for us. This is really, really beautiful. Look at everyone saying thank you. It was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So lovely. Thank you so much, Caroline, for your time today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on, Susie.
So great. And what a wonderful way to kind of launch your fantastic new Substack, which is born for something more. And I hope all of us, after that session, believe that we can create whatever we want to create with our kind of star within us. Oh, I feel emotional.
Okay, thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Caroline.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.